Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss today's Prime Minister's questions. The first one in which the Prime Minister's actually been in attendance for several weeks, and the last one for, well, the best part of 2 months really. The day before crucial by-election, Starmer was asking about the NHS, but more than that, asking how Sunak was going to pay for the plans that he says he has. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So Starmer was making two important points really with his questions. First, that Rishi Sunak was failing in his main healthcare pledge. And second, that for all the pressure on Labour to make sure that its plans are always fully costed, something that a number of supporters are a little bit uncomfortable with, the Conservatives do not seem to face the same scrutiny in the media. So the pledge first. At the start of the year, Rishi Sunak made his 5 pledges. Judge me on these, he said. Half a year later, he's no longer saying people should judge him on them. And he's trying to move on to some different policies with his intended reset after summer. But one of the pledges was cutting NHS waiting times. So Starmer began by saying that, well, waiting lists were at 7.2 million when Sunak became Prime Minister. So he then asked, so what are they at now? Needless to say, Rishi Sunak did not answer because the number is higher. Instead, he said that the waiting list had been affected by strikes and then asked Starmer if doctors should accept the pay deal, to which Starmer replied by saying that we don't seem to get any more answers from Sunak when he's here than we do when he's not here. He then said, well, the answer is 7.5 million, which is an increase, of course. He asked why the government were failing more patients than ever before, and Sunak then complained about Starmer not answering his question, only to be told by the speaker that actually I think you'll find it's the opposition who asked the questions. Starmer said that Sunak had been away for so long he'd forgotten how it works. Now, as always, I will add in something which I think Starmer should always say at this point, and I think he said it once in like several years, because both Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have this habit of not only not answering the questions put to them, but asking one of Starmer and then complaining when he doesn't answer. Starmer should always make the point that these questions are for the Prime Minister, and if Sunak wants Starmer answering questions, all he has to do is call a general election, and 2 months later, as if by magic, he will have his wish. He should do that every single time, because the public are broadly in support of a general election sooner rather than later. They're sick of the Conservatives hanging on when it's quite clear they've got no plan to deal with anything, and we're facing quite challenging times. But anyway, Starmer then turned to the funding side of it. So he noted that the government are now promoting Labour's staffing plans, only Sunak hasn't said how he's going to pay for it. So he said, well, where's the money coming from? And this is quite important because Labour are absolutely desperate to demonstrate that they will be balancing the book, so to speak. They have to. In order to win, they have to go the extra mile to prove beyond doubt that it will all balance. This is why Starmer's downplaying funding boosts, even though we know they're coming. Of course they're coming because he's already talked about the tax breaks he'll be removing. If you remove tax breaks, you generate more income, then you've got more spending. But he puts the emphasis on reform rather than spending boost, because when he talks about spending boost, the Tory press will go, you're going to pay for it then, how are you going to pay for it, you rascal? Whereas when he talks about reform, the public sort of get, well, you can make things better for the same money by doing things differently. But they are deathly afraid of the unfunded spending plans. But when the Conservatives announce unfunded spending plans, where's the media hammering them to say where the money will come from? Because unlike Labour, the Conservatives are not talking about removing tax breaks, are they? So if they're claiming to be boosting spending somehow, but they're not talking about raising more taxes, where's the money come from? Sunak just said, well, the plan is fully funded. Is it? Where? It's not published on the Health and Social Care website. Where is this fully funded plan? Like I say, if they won't increase taxes but claim that they're going to boost spending, then they're either lying or intending to borrow more. Which is it? Starmer wanted to know as well. He said that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, looked bewildered when Sunak said the plan was fully funded. He asked where's the money coming from, the magic money tree. And then Sunak said he would publish the plan in autumn. All right, okay. But if it's fully funded, why can't I publish it now? Starmer then turned to how Labour will be funding an increase in spending, because he talked about removing non-dom status, one of the tax breaks Labour have already said they'll be removing. He asked Sunak if he was so committed to non-dom status that he's refusing to let the government raise money from it for the NHS. Sunak then tried to say that Starmer's committed the money he would make from abolishing non-dom status 5 times. Okay, but I notice he didn't say that it wouldn't raise money for public services, did he? Or what justification there was for keeping this tax break for the rich. And then finally, Starmer asked about the mythical 40 new hospitals promised at the last election. He said there were not 40, they're not new, and many are not even hospitals. And Sunak maintained that these 40 new hospitals are being built. He then tried to tack on a push for the by-elections tomorrow by talking about one of the new hospitals in Uxbridge, which is where one of the constituency by-elections is tomorrow, and that Labour want to charge people for going there, which is nonsense, of course. It was a weak attempt to push ULEZ, which is the main wedge issue in that constituency there at the moment. But also, the thing to note is that about that hospital, obviously I looked it up, it's not been built. There's no new hospital there. The government are trying to argue that it's on target for being built by 2030. But the target was for 2024. It's not on target for that. So they're not on for meeting their manifesto commitment, even with that hospital. Also, it won't be a new hospital. There's already a hospital there. Now, fair enough, the buildings need redevelopment. If you're going to, knock buildings down and rebuild them new, you can say that's new building work and it needs doing, but you don't call it a new hospital. But although it will be a new building, it won't be a new hospital, and it won't even be built by this government. They're basically leaving that for Labour to deal with. Construction hasn't even begun yet. I had a look on the website. It's not even begun yet. But anyway, then it was Stephen Flynn for the SNP talking about the 2-child benefit cap and asked Sunak if he takes comfort from Labour supporting it. Sunak obviously said he welcomed the support, but Starmer had never kept a promise he made. Obviously, I've mentioned this before. Right now, I mean, it's the case in Scotland in general. Really, the key opponents there are Labour and the SNP. For quite a while, Labour had been beaten into 3rd place there as they declined, but ultimately for most seats, it's between Labour and the SNP. Now that Labour are re-emerging, the SNP are going, right, we don't really care about the Tories. We need to hammer Labour. The downside of it is, of course, Stephen Flynn is asking questions of the Tories, but about Labour, so therefore there's no right of reply. But this is obviously a good line for them at the moment. And it's in his second question, he basically said the same thing. He made the point that Labour are effectively supporting child poverty. Now, as Starmer had no right of reply there, and I do, I will just point something out that absolutely it's true. There's been a couple of policies that would absolutely alleviate child poverty, which Labour are not getting behind. And but what I will say is this: Labour in power have many jobs. I always say Keir Starmer's got one job in opposition, same as any Labour leader, form power. Once you've got power, you've got lots of responsibilities, one of which is reducing the levels of child poverty. I anticipate, not just hope for, anticipate that within the first term, child poverty levels will be lower. They're not lower in Scotland under the SNP, though. In fact, there may be some SNP supporters who will be going, but Phil, they've just introduced this new thing. That should help alleviate child poverty. Yeah, it's interesting, that. And it may well do some good. We don't know yet because it's quite recent. What I would say is this. So how come it took, SNP have been in government in Scotland for 15 years. How come it took until Labour were re-emerging for the SNP to do something about child poverty then? But there we go. I mean, this is party politics, isn't it? Now, of course, they don't have the same powers as a Westminster government, but they do have some powers. In fact, as I say, they have actually used those powers to make some extra payments to try and tackle child poverty. So why didn't they do that before? If it has an impact, it does beg the question, why has it only become a concern when they started falling in the polls? Finally, I must just end with a few questions from the backbenchers. I was paying particular attention to the backbenchers today because I was hoping for a particular question which did not arrive. But I'll begin with Tory MP Greg Clark. So he was asking about the Gigafactory announcement from Tata yesterday. This is the electric cell plant, which we absolutely need, but the taxpayer is stumping up in excess of £500 million just off the bat in order to counter post-Brexit trade barriers. And the Tories and Brexiteers are hailing it as this Brexit triumph. It's a Brexit harm because it's costing us over £500 million and it will carry on costing us forever because the taxpayer is stumping up money in order to cover for the lack of commercial viability in this country outside the single market. And it's interesting that the announcement was made just before an important by-election. We've sort of known it was coming. We knew it was coming ages ago. But the formal announcement was yesterday, just before a by-election. Not that it will help them because it's located near the constituency they have next to no chance of winning. But it would be worth asking how much the taxpayer is going to pay for this long term, and why we're having to subsidise it at all if post-Brexit Britain is a great place to do business. Like, shouldn't these sort of factories be able to start up commercially, like they can in other countries? After all, it's not like this is a part nationalisation plan. The government's paying into it, but it's not owning any shares. It's just handing over our cash. Then Jacob Rees-Mogg asked Rishi Sunak to do Nigel Farage a solid, help him out with his banking problems. Oh, Sunak's all over this. Oh, he's disgraceful, these banks closing accounts because of people's political views, which of course they're not. But then Sunak did say if anyone's got an issue that they could contact the Ombudsman. Not sure Nigel Farage has bothered to do that. Then Labour MP Barry Shearman quoted John Major saying Brexit was a catastrophic decision and asked if Sunak agreed with it. And Sunak said, well, since the UK left the single market, the economies have grown faster than Germany's. I mean, apart from the fact that it's not actually true. Just because one country has also made an unrelated crap decision, which has hit its economy, doesn't mean that our crap decision wasn't a crap decision. How is our economy doing compared to a few others, for example? Or indeed any others? Not well. Unfortunately, nobody poked Sunak about the cruise ships, which is what I was waiting for. Talked about that in my first video, unless I missed it, but I was trying to pay attention. So colour me disappointed about that one. But that's that for 7 weeks now. By-elections tomorrow, results the day after. Another Tory civil war battle next week, no doubt. Mind you, probably not as damaging as the leadership contest last summer. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.